Hi, my name's Meg, and welcome back to my channel. This week, come along with me as I set up February in my everyday journal. This is part of my series where each month of 2026 is themed after a Taylor Swift album, and this month I chose Fearless. I know that there may be some more obvious choices for Valentine's month, such as Lover or Red, but I thought that the fairy tale perception of love portrayed in many of this album's songs was fitting. We'll get into that later. Grab a hot drink and your own journal, or whatever you're working on, and feel free to put this on in the background. This journal is from Tifosi. I'll link as many of the materials as I can below, though most of this came from my stash collected over a few years, so some items may no longer be listed. The inks that I'm using are Diamine Golden Sands in my gold pen and Diamine Macassar in my brass pen. I really love this gold PET lace tape. It adds a really beautiful shine to the page. I also have some doilies here. These came from Amazon in a multi-pack. And I'm using quite a few of these punch stamps throughout the journal this month. This one has a really beautiful lace edge. I love these brown pieces of paper. They're kind of like vellum with gilding, and they remind me of storybook covers. We've got Romeo and Juliet stickers. We won't be using all of these. I also got this Couple's Life. It's a paper sticker pack from Journalsay made by Tomato Jam Girl. These star punches I used on vinyl. Some of this is Cricut vinyl, some of it is off-brand vinyl, but it came out with a variety of sizes for the stars. Hello, Dio. Of course I missed you. So we're going to start with the cover page. Similar to last month, I'm going to have February written on one side, and I'm going to have an affirmation card on the other. This is just me kind of working through a little bit of a collage process. Moving Dio out of the way. I'm writing on some craft paper with my fountain pens, and then I'm doing a drop shadow with that Diamine Macassar brown ink, just to give it a little bit more weight. The balance with collaging in an everyday journal is trying to get a good amount of texture and interest on the page without bulking up the journal too much, because we do want this thing to close at the end of the day. Using really thin pieces of paper like this brown vellum and the doilies can really help with cutting down on bulk. I use quite a bit of glue tape in this setup. You can also use just normal glue, but I find that glue tape holds up a little bit better. It actually sticks the paper down a lot more securely. I really dislike the look of paper that's kind of not entirely secured to the page, kind of lifting up and showing a shadow. And now I'm laying down the first of the stars. These things are a little bit tricky to get the backing off, so I'm going to cut out quite a bit of time where I'm sitting there trying to get the backs off and sticking them down, but you'll see the final effects on most of them. I really ended up liking this kind of stacked star look, and again, the vinyl isn't a very thick vinyl, so layering this is not a big deal for thickness of the journal. And then this washi tape with aged music on it, I think fit the vibe really nicely. Now I'm going to use this lace punch, but starting from the edge kind of makes it a little bit difficult, so I will correct this the next time that I use it. Hello again, Dio. These are some tabs that I had sitting in the back pocket of my journal. I'm using them for each of the months just for quick and easy navigation throughout my journal. These are super cheap to get in packs on Amazon, and lots of other journaling supply stores sell them. I think that the lace papers really also add a beautiful amount of texture without adding bulk or cutting away too much of the page. So they are going to be featured throughout this setup. The affirmation card that I have says, "The power to change my world lies within me," which I think is a really empowering sentiment to just keep in mind throughout the month. Something I'm doing with this lace PET gold tape is layering it across into the other page to try and connect the two a little bit more so that they're not both just floating. That's key whenever you're collaging, is trying to get things to touch and overlap a little bit so that they don't feel like they're floating independent of everything. I'm using my grid spacing guide that I created at the beginning of the journal to just try and help myself space out where I need. This doesn't always work out, but it's helpful to gauge an idea of how far I need to go. Here we go. Now I'm actually putting it in the middle of the page, which is going to be a whole lot easier to use those markings on the sides to line up that lace pattern. On the purple part, it has these silver markings that help you line up the lace pattern underneath. I like to highlight the weekends in this calendar so that it's a little bit easier for me to see where I am in the month whenever I'm trying to write down events. And then I just go ahead and highlight the bottom one because I know that the last day is Saturday, but I didn't actually go quite far enough down with my brown line. And then as I'm writing down the days, I will notice this. Right about there is where I noticed that I don't have 5 weekdays, I have 4 weekdays and then a highlighted line, so it looks like Friday at the end of the month is also going to be considered part of the weekend. Not a big deal, I just highlight that bottom line and it doesn't bother me that much. So the other side of this spread is going to have my task list as well as a challenge calendar. I don't do this every single month, but February I usually do a no spend challenge where I try not to spend money on anything except for groceries, gas, and regular bills. This helps curb some spending habits after, the holidays, whenever you're buying left, right, and center for people's gifts or little things that you need for a party that you're hosting or whatever you're doing. This kind of helps me just reset, don't click checkout, and hold things in my cart just a little while longer to make sure that it's really something that I want. But then, of course, in March, I have this big cart full of stuff, so I go back through and I double check, is this something that I really want, or was this more of an impulse purchase in the moment? I don't do this throughout the year. It's really only 1 month a year, but I think that that's enough for me to kind of do a reset. I'm going to be using this gold dot marker to dot the days where I don't spend any money. My goal is never to hit all 30 days, or it's not a streak style challenge where if I miss a day, then the entire month is busted. It's more of I want to try and do this as many days of the month as possible, but if I can't manage it one day or a couple of days, then that doesn't mean that the challenge is failed. It means that I managed 26 out of 28 days, which I think is a pretty good total. Now we're getting into my reading log. I'm going to collage some of the doilies and this vellum paper off to the side. Adding some of that gold lace tape. Cutting it on an angle just so that it kind of follows the edge of that doily. This sticker came from the paper stickers that I showed you at the beginning, and we've got some of those gold vinyl stars and white layering stars. Stars are a repeated motif in this album, from looking at the stars to being a star and star-crossed lovers with Romeo and Juliet, so I felt like that was a very easy motif for me to repeat in my journal, and putting a bunch more gold in there just works with the album color scheme. Don't mind my head peeking in here. I'll worry about numbering the days later. So this is a currently inked page. I do a currently inked once a month on my channel, but I do that in a different journal, and that is more full swatches of the inks that I'm using throughout the month. This is more of a chance for me to log all of my pens that are actually inked and do a double check of whether or not they need to be re-inked or if they need to be cleaned out, because I'm really not using them except on these currently inked pages. It's a good exercise rather than just letting them sit in their case for months on end. I actually get through and touch and use all of my pens every month if they're inked. If they're not inked, they just stay in the case and stay clean. So this is a really simple setup. I use most of the white space on the page for writing out all of those pens, so I don't want to put too much decoration. But a little bit of that lace paper and a doily adds just enough texture. Some of that gold lace tape comes back. And this page is done. All right, now we're into the weeklies. So, as I did with January, each week is themed after a different song within the album. I'm not going to do every song in every album because that's too many songs and I don't have enough pages for it. But I've picked the songs that I feel like I can do justice with a themed spread. And this page is going to be the title song of the album, Fearless. We've got some rain city scene. We've got a girl in a very pretty dress, her best dress maybe. It all feels very romantic. I'm going to double check the calendar so I know what day I'm starting on. I don't put the entire week in whatever month has the most days of a week if it's split part way. So I usually do a Monday start for my weeks, and this time Sunday was when the month actually started. So it gives me an opportunity sometimes to actually have 8 days on a page or 6 days on a page, which is a little bit easier to balance whenever you're planning out pages, actually. I ended up making the date numbers on vinyl stars using some Sharpie so that it wouldn't rub off. Now, I remember I was in high school when this song came out, and at first I was a little bit annoyed because at that point in time, obviously, I knew the story of Romeo and Juliet, and the song implies that they get married and live happily ever after, which is a lovely sentiment, but not accurate to the story. So I was a little bit annoyed that probably some people younger than me would hear this song before they ever knew what Romeo and Juliet was by Shakespeare, and they would have the wrong impression of the point of the story. But it is a very catchy song, so, I got over it, and it is one of my favorites on the album. So last week we had the girl with the red dress, and now we've got pops of red in this week. So it's not entirely like brown scale and gold, but I am trying to avoid black. I'm trying to avoid cool colors. I think that the browns and the reds look good together, with the red being a little bit of an accent. So last month, my days in my weeks were more of a tall, narrow box, and this month they are more like just wide squares. I don't really have a particular favorite style of weekly box, but I do prefer something that is at least as tall as it is wide. I don't care for the weeklies that have a very wide bar but a very short height, because I tend to list things in here, so multiple events, multiple tasks, and those horizontal ones, I feel like I run out of room pretty quickly, and then I have to move over to take up more room on the side of the box. It just ends up looking messy to me. On to the next week. And this time I'm actually drawing the boxes before I put down any of the decoration. Usually that works out best because then I know that I've got enough space. Again, don't mind my head popping in there. I will get used to this filming thing, I promise. For this one, we've got a girl who looks like she's in high school. She's wearing kind of like combat boots. And then we've got a guy also with a backpack. You might draw the conclusion that they end up together with like this wedding couple, but this was also a very catchy song that I enjoyed from the album. And once again, I'm using my gold pen to draw out a little bit of a lyric and then drop shadow with the Diamine Macassar. You might notice that I'm actually alternating the ink that I'm using to write the days of the week for each week. So the first week we used Diamine Macassar, second week we're doing the Diamine Golden Sands, and now we're back to Macassar. And of course the last week, you might predict we're going to use Golden Sands to write down the days of the week. I enjoy mixing things up a little bit like that. Whenever I have done this in the past, I've alternated which inks I use to write the date versus the day name. It just adds a little bit of variety. So that's that week, and we will get on to the final spread. I used this lace punch and some craft paper to bring the craft paper back as a border. So I tore the corners off of the brown vellum here, and you end up with this kind of diamond leftover piece. And I felt like a good way for me to use that was actually to cut it into 4 pieces through the center, and then I will have 4 more corner pieces, which are great for collaging. Now this week only has 6 days, so I'm going to do 2 columns in the center, and then I can use the outer sides as kind of decorative framed panels. I'm pressing very lightly with this X-Acto knife. It is a new blade, so it is quite sharp, which is perfect for cutting these kind of delicate materials, because if it is a dull blade, then it's going to drag and tear. But I don't want to press so much that it ends up cutting into the journal paper. I'm using a scrap piece of lace paper that I used earlier in the journal that I didn't plan on using again as a backing piece for that tape, because there are so many holes in this doily that all of that ends up getting everywhere if I try and do it on the paper or on my desk. Now, this song is about a little bit of a different kind of love. It is a family, father-daughter relationship. It's a very heartwarming song. I've got these stickers that kind of make me think of a girl walking with her dad on an outing, or a little bit more of just a platonic love. I ended up making a shelf or bench for this couple to sit on using that washi tape. So I ended up penning out this lyric, which is the longest lyric that I ended up penning out for this setup, but I think it's a nice one. A great note to end the month on. Add a few more stars and we're finished. We'll go ahead and do a flip through, and in the comments below, let me know which album you think that I should pick for March. I'll leave you with a little bit of music, and I hope I'll see you in my next video.